You all by yourself?
No, I'm never by myself. I always got friends.
No, of course.
What about you? What do you think? It's 46-year anniversary of Roe v. Wade today. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Oh, I'll ask you. Do you hate America?
Do I hate America? Yeah. I don't have any huge affection for America. Why do you ask?
Okay, do you hate the Soviet Union?
Do I hate the Soviet Union? No, not particularly. What's your line? What's your position? I asked you a question. I answered your question. You didn't answer mine.
I see it as a neutral thing. I see abortion as a vice, so I don't have strong opinions on it.
I see.
But
so, okay.
Here's my question for you then. I'm turn it back to you. So,
is this going to be a neutral question?
No, this will be.
It isn't, because there's no such thing, is there?
No, there's no such thing. This will be a.
And there's no such thing as a neutral abortion. But go ahead.
Okay, I'll ask you. So, do you think abortion is murder?
Yes.
Okay. So, imagine 1973. The Supreme Court holds 6-3 that it is legal to perform terror attacks.
Yes.
They say it is okay, absolutely, for Al-Qaeda terrorists to kill 2,000 Americans every single day.
Yes.
Not only this, they dedicate U.S. tax dollars towards murdering Americans, 2,000 of them a day.
Okay.
Since 1973, 55 million Americans are killed by these terror attacks.
Yeah.
That's about 4.5 Holocausts funded by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
This is so entrenched that actually you have to hope against hope that maybe you can elect the right politician to stop taxpayer funding these mass murders. But it doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
The idea of actually stopping them is totally off the table.
Yeah.
So what happens is the people who think this is murder, they don't do anything about it. What they do is they say it's murder, but all they really do is they kind of walk around airports, kind of holding up signs, saying it's bad, but they don't really think anything negative about the politicians who, I mean, truly negative about politicians who take their money to murder people. They don't, they think it's actually beyond the pale to do anything to really stop these murders. They kind of hold up pictures of burning buildings, maybe hoping the terrorists will stop, but they don't really do anything about it. That seems strange to me, right? You asking me, what do you think?
They don't do anything about it.
Right, you're asking me, what do you think of police?
So what's the correlation you're making? You have a correlation.
Yes, I'm saying that it seems a bit strange to me that pro-life people could truly think abortion is murder, but speak and act the way they do about the United States government. I'm
not a pro-life guy. I'm an abolitionist. There's a difference. The profound difference. The pro-life, what you're describing is the pro-life movement. I'm not a part of that.
You're not.
I'm an abolitionist. I'm for the total abolition of child sacrifice. That's what I'm for, under every circumstance.
Okay, sure. Do you believe that the United States government facilitates child sacrifice?
Yes.
Do you hate the United States government?
No, I don't hate the United States government.
They facilitate child sacrifice.
Well, that doesn't mean that I have to hate everything because, what's your line though?
It seemed your position is strange. If I knew somebody was mass murdering people, killing them in the millions, 4 Holocausts in like 40 years, I would hate that person. Then
we would be elevating it to the next degree. And American slavery, there were people who were against. They were against slavery, and in fact, it was voted 7-2, upheld by the Supreme Court in 1857. That didn't make it right. It wasn't until the John Browns and the Harriet Tubmans intervened. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to change the culture by being out here talking about this in a meaningful way instead of hiding in a voting booth or hiding at some march to life. That's not where you're finding me here, sir. I'm out here on the front lines of this. I'm also at the mills saving babies. I'm also trying to do something about the fathers and try to give them resources to help them take care of their children and exhort them to that end. I'm playing every card in my hand. So you're speaking from actually inadvertently preaching to the choir because I don't like the pro-life movement. I don't appreciate the pro-life passive movement about it at all. That's why I'm out here. But you're regarding it as a neutral matter, which is unusual to me because it's either just like a lot of people held cowardly to the idea that American slavery was a neutral thing. It's up to you, it's up to each individual. But that was a cowardly position to take, and people took that cowardly position because they didn't want trouble. And so now here you are, 100 and whatever, so you do the math, 70 years later, and here you and I are talking about the worst Holocaust in the history of mankind. It's either is or it isn't. The Dred Scott decision was wrong.
I don't happen to think abortion is murder, which is why I feel no need to take such strong.
Right, I see that.
I would feel much stronger.
No, I understand that, and you can see that I do feel strongly about it, but I feel strongly enough to do something about it. Come on, now you don't think it's murder, but so then that's not a neutral stance. You have a stance. It's not neutral.
Sorry,
it's not.
Right.
It's not nebulous.
Let me restate my position. I see myself as neutral only to the extent that I am not. I don't consider myself.
I'm listening to you. I'm standing my sign back up.
I don't consider myself to be on the left. I don't consider myself to celebrate. That's what I say.
So, where do you get the value system from? I mean, I think that's a legitimate question. I'm a Christian, so I get mine from the Bible. I see myself as being inadequate to judge well for the reasons that you and I just described, and that historically we haven't been able to get it right. We've gotten it wrong consistently. I mean, we got it wrong with American slavery. We got it wrong with and we're getting it wrong on this. Pol Pot got it wrong. Adolf Hitler got it wrong. We get it wrong all the time, and we keep thinking that this is going to be the next manifestation of getting it right. So you've got Donald Trump, that retard is saying we're going to make America great again. No, we're not, because we're stuck with ourselves and our own faulty thinking. But Barack Obama said the same thing when he said, yes, we can. And so that ideology is that somehow in us, somewhere in the side of you is a good thing that can think good thoughts and can produce good things. And that which is contrary with the position of Christianity that says, in you, nothing good relies, and you have to get good judgment from an objective source that's not you. So when you say you're neutral, I gotta tell you, no, you're not. No, you're not, pal. Come on, man.
I gave that answer kind of on the fly.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I know, I got you, and I appreciate you pulling over to talk to me, but you're not neutral.
Sure.
And no, neither am I, and neither of these people who say, I don't know, they're not neutral. They have a position. Hey, boss, how are you? They have a position. And so do I. I'm trying to be consistent to my position. For that, I thank you for exhorting me. I wish you would exhort more pro-lifers.
I do.
To that end. No. But at the end of the day, where do you get your source of, and this is a real important question for you.
Oh, sure.
I mean, where do you get your source of judgment? What is good?
Human reason.
What is good? How do you define
good? Which facilitates peaceful coexistence among humans. So things that are good, that promote human flourishing, civilization.
Well, that doesn't.
Advanced material production, things like that.
Well, that doesn't. That's not peaceful goodwill towards men. Here again, in the Dred Scott decision, they said it's 60% of a man. No, it's either 100% or 0%. So here again, you're breaking down the way I see it is. Ted Bundy thought the best possible good was, well, raping girls. Well, was he wrong? Why was he wrong?
It would be incoherent. So if I were to ask Ted Bundy to argue why was it okay to kill girls, he would then need to effectively argue against peaceful resolution to conflicts. So I would say, okay, so Ted Bundy, you said,
say that again. I just didn't hear you.
So for Ted Bundy to argue for raping people would be a performative contradiction. Because what Ted Bundy would be arguing for effectively would be against arguing. He would be arguing for violence. That would be a form of contradiction. So he would run
violent. You're not arguing against violence. So you too are inconsistent.
No, in that case.
Oh, thank you, sir. This is the one that keeps falling down. I don't know what. Maybe I ought to just.
Crosswind. It's going this way.
You're the academician. Me, I'm just the guy. But you see, what I'm getting at is that you're running up against the ground of your own inconsistency in that, because you're saying on one hand I'm neutral, and you say that violence is bad, and then you say, you back that. Kudos to you for that. But at the end of the day, still. When I'm laboring with you, by the way, I'm Ron.
Nice to meet you, Ron.
Nice to meet you.
Not say my
okay. Anyway, what I'm laboring with is to show you the own consistency in your own way of thinking. It's saying, you're saying, okay, violence is bad, but I'm neutral. I'm not neutral about that, but I'm not against that. I don't view that as murder.
Sure.
it kind of can either be 100% or 0%,
So
just like Dred Scott.
in the case of abortions, the way I see it, it is in fact a woman's right to her own body. I do accept that reasoning.
But that's not her body.
It's still a person in her body, so she
That's
has
right.
the right to expel an unwanted person. Right. It is still a person taking from her. It is still a person, I mean, indulging herself on her, feeding off of her.
What about the father? The father has no say-so in that?
I could be willing to see, you know, in a marriage situation, a father might be able to stake such a claim. So, you know, if you marry someone and you vow, I mean, that's partially, you know, to create families, raise children. I'm willing to accept that. If you marry someone, you can't unilaterally abort their child. I can accept it.
But again, if I were to press that and we were to chase that around, you know, we went and sat down and had a cup of coffee and chased that around, you run aground of some inconsistency there. And what you have is, again, why I'm laboring this is because to have knowledge, just hear me through and I'll listen to you, to have knowledge at all, you have to get revelation from one who has all knowledge, or you can't be, because maybe we're just having an illusion.
Oh, I hate this line of reasoning. No, listen, by talking to me, you are presupposing that I exist. That solipsism isn't really an argument. It's not that kind of reasoning is not a conversation starter, it's a conversation stopper, right? Simply by talking to me, you are presupposing that I'm real.
I might be imagining that you're real.
No.
How do you know that? Do you know that to be true?
For the purpose of conversation, you're presupposing. You can't even voice it again.
I am presupposing, and you are presupposing truth also, but you're presupposing it with an understanding that you don't know everything. If you don't know everything, then you can't know anything. You still have to rely on something outside of yourself.
I can be certain of things beyond reasonable doubt, so I can be certain of certain like axiomatic principles. Like I can be certain of say the identity property.
How do you know your data is correct? How do you know you're not looking through a false lens?
There's no reason to believe that. There's no evidence for that.
But you're running that through your own faulty lens. Okay, you admit yourself to be.
I don't know what that evidence would look like. That said,
right, exactly.
That said, I still haven't encountered anything that even suggests evidence for it. There's an introduction of doubt in this conversation, but like I said,
there's things that you're not. There's things that you're not. That you know that you don't know.
I should also give a little bit more background context.
Sure.
I'm also a member of the School Secular Student Alliance. I do this kind of thing all the time.
Okay.
Sometimes I might jump ahead in certain things and say, "Oh, I've heard this before." That's what I mean when I like. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not offended by it. It doesn't matter. Believe me. I mean, you're just like a nice guy. I like you. Everything is cool here. So you can jump ahead as far as you want, and I'm going to try to be mindful of not jumping ahead of you and jumping, because I kind of have also heard it. You know, this isn't my first rodeo either. I think you can see that. No, I mean, am I acting like this is my first time out here?
Certainly not.
Probably not. So this is my position, and I'll leave it, I'll drop it there. Is that you and I, as finite beings, having a limit of knowledge, have to have some transcendent source of knowledge to know that we have knowledge at all. Or else everything falls like a house of cards. Now hear me through.
Sure.
Now, without that knowledge, that at the end of the day, it has to come from that person. That person's not me, and you know it's not you.
I think actually it is. I do have that kind of reason. I have that.
You actually think you are the one who knows everything.
I believe in human reason. So not as in me, you know, but like in general,
again,
I do believe that human reason.
But again, that's been in our discussion. We've already seen that that's broken down again and again and again.
No,
so you think you're different.
You've suggested that I've arrived at wrong conclusions, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible for me to arrive at correct ones. In the same way, so this idea, like, you know, I don't know if
a blind pig gets a husk of corn once in a while, you know. I mean,
So, and a blind pig that doesn't get any corn at all will eventually starve.
Have a good one.
If I see some blind pigs that have lived to adulthood, that leads me to believe that even without sight, they're good at finding corn, right? The selection process against it.
That's true.
It's a bit of a tortured metaphor, but my point is, right, eventually there is a process, and I do believe this, that selects against bad ideas and selects for good ones. You can call it the marketplace of ideas. You can call it
sure. Right. But even then, it has its limitation.
I don't think so.
And it's played itself out in history. Consistently played itself out where people make insane. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
In Texas, a lot of people are making a big deal. They want to repeal Roe v. Wade. They think that's the brass ring. I don't.
Really?
No. In Texas, in 1972, it was more. The penalty for possession of a small amount of weed was greater than for having an abortion. Abortion was illegal, but it was a misdemeanor. So how inconsistent is that?
Incredibly so, actually. We're actually so far ahead. Do you think that...
Right. So
Actually, I'll take this
incredibly so. So the pro-life movement is saying we need to go back and take that away, but you didn't view it consistently as murder even in 1975.
100% agree with you, actually.
But the same is true of each side and in each generation. We come up with maniacal things that we can look back in hindsight and say, what was that? Like, for instance, Adolf Hitler and in the Holocaust, the church and the Lutheran church was singing songs and carrying on like nothing's going on. Were they right or wrong? There you go, dear. God bless you. Well, we would say, I think, you would say they were wrong.
Yes,
I think you would say Dred Scott was wrong. But they based theirs on what they believed to be human, what was the term you used?
Human reason.
Human reason, yeah. So they subscribe to human reason just as...
but I know they were wrong.
But how do you know? How do you know they were wrong?
People died. It did not lead to peaceful coexistence.
People are dying there.
That was development in reverse.
People are dying there.
Sorry, innocent.
So you're going to keep running aground.
Well, no. But again, I can. Well, I'm sorry, I want to harp this. Pointing to the fact that people have been wrong about things in the past, again, I feel as though I can be right. So even now, we're engaging in argument, we're engaging in discourse. So you're trying to lead me to a correct conclusion, which means you believe that in other words, you're saying, even the fact that you're arguing this to me, let's say you eventually convinced me and I agreed that abortion was wrong, then you would have taken me solely through my own reasoning to what you think is a correct conclusion. You wouldn't have needed, even though you think that
I would have relied on revelation from God.
But no, that's not how you're trying to convince me, though.
Okay, well then let me rephrase it. Let me be perfectly clear.
Right.
Is that I believe in an immanent, transcendent God.
Timeless,
it's unique to the Bible.
Uncaused cause.
All that. All that. You know that, but and that's a unique trait of the God of the Bible. And so without revelation from the unique transcendent God, I believe myself to be only able to, there you go, bud. Have a good one, all right?
But then how are you trying to convince me? Because you haven't, because you're trying to convince, and I think you're doing something right, but you don't realize you're doing it right. That's why I'm
thank you.
Thank
you for telling me what I'm doing right.
I'm sorry.
What am I doing right?
I'm sorry, that seems condescending.
You know, that doesn't sound condondescing at all.
What I mean is, because what you're saying is like, you're saying, it
does sound condescending. You even caught yourself. Come on, man. Come on, bro.
Because what you were saying is effectively, the only way to know these things for sure is through this revelation. Yes. But even now, you weren't trying to articulate revelation to me. You were trying to actually argue. And so you were using my human reason to convince me, were you not?
Yes, but but human reason comes from something. Even still, human reason isn't a product of its own. It had to come from something. Just like they're doing construction here. Something's going to be here in a year that wasn't here now, but it required somebody to build it. So I've
never seen anything come from anything, though. I've seen things transformed into other things, but I've never seen any. Right. But I've never seen
nothing comes from nothing.
I don't think anything came from anything. I think things always existed. So I don't really see. I've never seen a building simply appear. I've only ever seen things that already existed turned into other things that exist, right? But I've never seen a new thing created.
Things always exist.
I believe in an eternal universe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
I believe in
that's held among many, but. You don't know. Could be wrong.
I could be, but I've never seen anything to contradict it.
Right.
The day I see something created is the day I might change my mind.
And allow me to be really bold and clear.
Go for it. I feel we're having a good, honest conversation.
That's your problem, is that you think you're the end of it. You think that you're the top of the food chain. If you can understand it, then it must be true. If you can't, it doesn't, which is why we're guilty before God, because if indeed he is transcending of these things, he's over you, and he's the source of your reason, and then you have a form of godliness, but you deny him, you find yourself in collision course.
The laws are written on my...
You find yourself in collision with him. So now you've offended him. And so for this reason, him loving people, he sent his son Christ to die on the cross and pay that penalty for that. But that they would abandon themselves as the final authority and turn to him as the final authority, which I would exhort you to. I'm not, I don't have a horse in this race other...
Hang on a second. You got on me for saying I was neutral before. You don't have a horse in the race of whether or not my soul is saved?
Yeah, right. I don't have a horse in the. I don't have a personal horse in this race. In other words, what's happening here is going to change what I eat for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That's what I mean to say. So, but I do care. And I care enough to care about my brother. I care enough to care about, Jesus says, and so much as you've done for the least of these, so you've done for me. I look at that as a least of these. But I also consider myself to be a least of these. And I don't consider myself to be an exalted person. You're coming from a place of final authority, being you, which is going to break down. Even in our discussion, you've had to go back, and I have too, because you and I are not capable of coming up with establishing truth on our own standards. There you go, bro.
I think that's right. Those we're going to have to agree to disagree. I agree that I'm not right about. Well, sorry. Everything I think, I have to think I'm right. I can't think something.
Of course, yeah, I agree with that. But you don't agree about the source, where you got there.
But I can agree to the possibility that obviously I can learn new things, and so I guess we'll have to.
Me too.
And so I just disagree with this notion, though, that I can never be right about everything. I don't think that's the case. I think that if I say could live forever or something like that, if I had an eternity to simply live and argue, then I could know things simply through this process of debate. I think I could approach truth without any kind of relation simply by having these arguments. So, when I was a child, I believed some pretty blatantly wrong things.
Sure.
And it didn't really require divine intervention for me to learn the correct thing.
So when did your human reasoning, there you go, dear, God bless you, have a good one, okay? When did your human reasoning graduate to being the king of each discussion? Because you thought you were right then. I thought I was going to be an astronaut. I'm not an astronaut. I was wrong. Well, I came to that conclusion that I didn't have full control over everything, and so I somewhere in the lines, I did turn to God. But in the big picture, I even for that rely on Him, even because you probably, just from talking to you, I would have to say you're probably smarter than I am. Your IQ is probably better than I am.
I'm not going to make any claims.
It doesn't matter. It's moot. But to say that I'm not relying on my ability to argue or debate this, I'm relying on something outside of me, which I found in the Bible. Now, what happens is when you talked about goodness, like for instance, what's your source of good? You were talking about the general source of good being
human flourishing.
Human flourishing, but even that you're having to borrow from the Bible.
People say that, and I really don't understand that.
No, I'm glad that people are saying that. There you go, dear. Have a good one. Okay.
It's a very strange kind of argument because
that's very cool. I'm so cool that you're hearing that. Man, somebody saying you that?
Yeah, because I go to convention. Like a friend took me to an apologetics conference.
Fantastic, man.
But here's the thing, right?
That's presupologetics 101, But I'm impressed that you.
But the thing is,
there's somebody else out there. That's great.
It's kind of a weak tautology. This
God bless you. All right.
So, like when you say that's what good is, but good has, people have always been able to articulate the concept. I mean, I know you say, yeah, we all have this sort of idea imprinted on us, but people have been articulating the concept of good for thousands of years.
Oh, sure.
Even before Christianity came to them, it would be a little weird. You're going to lose that sign.
Nah, I'm not going to lose it, man. Not with my friend. Yeah, so yeah, they have been saying that for thousands of years.
It would be weird to go to like some Germanic tribe, in 500 AD and say, I see you're calling things good. What does that mean? And then they say, oh, 1,000 miles from here in this Roman province, there's a bunch of Jews and they have a God. And actually what happens is good is just a manifestation, a reflection of what they believe. That'd be a bit strange. That wouldn't be what they would say at all.
No, but they will have a certain value system that they've developed that will have some consistency with the God of the Bible, and
which is hard-won lessons,
which is the produce in my worldview, which is the produce of being made in His image. So why don't? And I travel a lot. In fact, I'm a missionary to Africa. I go into Central Africa, and I go to places where there isn't a lot of Christian background, but even there's some understanding. There's some general understanding. Why do they randomly know not to steal? That they shouldn't?
Oh, I can answer that.
I'd like to hear it.
So for me, I would say these are kind of selected against behaviors. These are hard-won lessons of civilization. So if you have a society that regularly steals or a society that sanctions murder among equals, they will quickly stop being a society. They will socially unravel, they'll probably die.
Which
or be
is what's going to
assimilated,
happen to us if we continue with that.
perhaps. Or they'll be assimilated into another more virtuous society. So even
But again,
though
the virtue comes from,
facilitating human civilization, that's what I'm saying, right?
which is, so that's the king now.
yeah, human
facilitating-
flourishing. I'm sorry, you're right. I see civilization and its continued advancement, you know, peaceful social relations,
boss, how about you?
as
I
the
know this
ultimate
guy.
good of
I
humans.
just love watching him talk.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Your
Yeah.
name, I'm sorry.
James.
Oh, I've right. You've seen me with those guys over there.
Yeah, philosophy club.
Well, you
Yeah.
missed a lot of it. We've had, you missed most of it. We've been having a lively, good discussion.
Got it that time.
We're talking about presuppositional apologetics. We're
sorry.
talking about what's our source of good. What's your source for good? What do you think is good? You like hearing him talk. I like to hear you talk.
Well, I think it's subjective, but
Son of a bitch.
yeah, it's still.
I'm sorry. Bleep out my curse words.
You
Don't
out of
let
here,
that
man.
happen.
I'll see you later.
Can you take any signs back with you? You got them, right?
I'm just going to grab my signs. I'm going to get out of here in a little bit. I got something to do.
Like 3 o'clock, probably.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
All right, Jonathan.
All right.
Take care, man.
I don't believe morals are subjective. I'm not there.
So you're getting out of this. So here you go. But
But I do
so we
think there's
can't
a
all
source.
agree. So somebody's right and somebody's wrong.
Yes, I agree.
Based on what?
I don't know. How do
Because
you
he
go
doesn't
from
agree with
one-
you and you don't agree with him. So we can't both be right.
That is correct. I am right and he's right.
Based on, and which is what we were talking about, is what's your source of ultimate authority. And according to my friend, he is, you know, and your human reasoning
reasons.
is the top.
Not
But you
me
admit
personally,
that, but you admit that it's been flawed numerous times.
I've been wrong about things.
You've been wrong
That's
about
correct.
things, but you're wrong about that.
I don't think I'm wrong about that.
You don't think?
I logically can't be wrong. Like, I can't believe that I'm wrong about this. So I
But
can't.
you have the capacity to be wrong, so you could be wrong.
It's certainly possible.
That's right.
I have no reason to believe
So
I'm
to
wrong
have
at any
truth,
given
to have ultimate truth, this is where we were going. To have ultimate truth, you then have to have a source of ultimate truth that's not you. Because even as smart as this guy is, a guy that you like to listen to, he even admits that he's possibly wrong.
Yeah.
Even right now. So to have righteousness, there has to be not a subjective, which you and I agree. Now you and I are on the same
Yes,
team
I-
here. You can't have a subjective form of righteousness, or truth would be a better source for this. You need an objective one, and that has to come from outside of you, because you can't make up your own mind.
Well, I have a question. Sure.
All right.
So if the ultimate source of morality is human reason,
Yeah.
what if you have a human being like a psychopath who is born completely without empathy and they
And
don't
he-
see any reason not to kill people?
He's wrong about something. So when people use the word good or bon or gurungile or any whatever language equivalent, they always use these words to describe things that facilitate peaceful coexistence among people, right?
And they plagiarize. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I know I'm plagiarizing from Christians.
You're
they've
plagiarizing
always-
goodness, but go ahead.
Right, they've always used
There you go.
good to describe
God
a
bless you.
certain set of behaviors.
There you go, man.
Even if they disagree,
Have a
the
good one.
goal generally is to not have a society that breaks down. They always mean the same thing.
Okay, so it's socially mediated. It's not an individual human being.
We better off? 46-year anniversary of Roe v. Wade is today. Are we better off? Are you better off? Based on what?
Oh, I absolutely disagree with that.
There you
I would
go.
say the reason China did not have an
Have a
industrial
good one.
revolution was part of it was A, because China was xenophobic and eschewed trade with outsiders, and also because culturally they saw merchantry as a dishonorable profession, and they often funneled their best and brightest into bureaucratic rent-seeking positions. So if China were willing to trade with others, if China did not see being a merchant as somehow dishonorable, and if China wasn't constantly taking all of its smart people and putting them behind a desk pushing pencils, I think China would have had an industrial revolution.
So which one of you are right?
Obviously.
Obviously.
I mean, here's the thing.
Based on
I can
what?
only
Based
ever
on what
answer-
standard?
I think I win the argument. I mean, I'm just saying, if you ask me that, I can only ever say me, right?
That's right.
I
I
can
know.
never. So there's.
No, you never think. I've said that also. I never think I'm wrong, but sometimes I am. So how can that be? Then I can't possibly be the last authority if I never think I'm wrong, but sometimes I admit that I
we
am.
have to argue with each other, and we'll eventually arrive at a true conclusion, right?
Yeah, but not
Or
necessarily.
we will eventually remove
Have
bad
we done
conclusions.
that? Have we done that when we added another component? We've just gotten more convoluted.
Then I can just start removing bad ideas from him, and he can maybe remove bad ideas from me.
Yeah, I mean, everybody is learning.
Yeah, but still, you'll never arrive at complete truth. You'll never arrive until you have the complete, until you have some source of total knowledge.
I may never get as good as I can be, but I can always be better than I am. Right?
Of course, that's not in question. That's not even question. Or yeah.
As long as I have a method of removing bad ideas, then human reason isn't right. As long as there is a way to stop me from thinking bad things,
There you go, boss.
then I can continue to replace those with good ideas.
Right, and from the Christian perspective, if you have a rotten egg and you have a 3-egg omelet, 2 good eggs and 1 bad one, you can't ever remove it. You'll never get the ultimate corruption. Will never leave
I
it.
strongly disagree with that.
I know that you do.
So if I see,
No, I know that you do. I've gotten to know you well enough in this discussion to know that you already presuppose yourself to be good and to be and be able to, because otherwise you couldn't arrive at goodness without a source of goodness outside of you.
I mean, I believe that most people are good who aren't like violent criminals. So
Right.
people who take our development in.
But why is that bad? And then we keep going
It's
around.
not conducive to human civilization. So if you regularly steal from people or dishonor your parents or rape people, this degrades society, it weakens social trust, it weakens social bonds.
You're plagiarizing from God's word again.
Well, so the definition of
There you
good
go.
is what is good for
Have a good one. God bless you,
I would
man.
say, well, what is good is that which is conducive
There
to
you are.
flourishing, and civilization is conducive to flourishing.
Okay, so where
So-
does that end? For example, the Japanese had a custom called ubasute, where they would send the old people out into the forest to die. And that was probably good